All right, guys, so let's talk Kouri Richins. And I'm going to warn you, this is going to be a wild one. So, who is Kouri Richins and what is she up to today? Well, today, Kouri Richins sits in a Summit County, Utah jail, having been accused of killing her husband, Eric Richins, who is 8 years her senior. Now, before Kouri Richins was sitting in that Summit County jail, Kouri Richins was a number of things, and none could have predicted the outcome that we know to be today. Kouri Richins was once an energetic Home Depot checkout girl. In fact, that's where she met her husband, Eric Richins, who was a contractor who was a customer at her Home Depot. And we're going to get back to that. Kouri Richins was once a wife. She is now a widow. Kouri Richins is the mother of 3 beautiful little boys. Kouri Richins was a rather successful real estate agent, and by all accounts, Kouri Richins was living a picture-perfect life with her husband Eric, her 3 sons, her real estate business, and just about anything she could possibly want in a beautiful home in Utah. Oh gosh, and I almost forgot. Kouri Richins is also an author. In fact, that is one of the roles that Kouri Richins has played that makes this story so interesting and shocking. After Kouri Richins successfully, allegedly, poisoned her husband to death after 3 attempts, and again, we're going to get into all of those details in this video, she wrote a children's book on how to deal with grief. She wrote a children's book on how to deal with grief after she allegedly poisoned her husband and father of her 3 children to death. And she talks about how in writing that children's book, she included her children, and that book is a product of her grieving along with their children and writing a book that was exactly what they needed to support them in dealing with their grief over the loss of their father and for her husband. Guys, I told you this is a really crazy story. So the 2 hosts of a morning show that Kouri Richins appeared on, Good Day Utah, to talk about her children's book that teaches children how to handle grief when they lose a loved one. Those 2 hosts were interviewed on News Nation, and here is some of what they had to say.
Let me play a little piece of sound. This is one of the questions you actually asked her during the interview. Let's listen.
So you actually wrote this book with your children.
I did. Mm-hmm.
And it's only been a year. How did you process and say you go from processing death to I need to write a book and help others?
You know, I just watched the struggle that my kids were going through. And I actually, I went on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and trying to find something that we could use to cope at nights. Nights are the hardest, it seems like, for everybody when, dealing with anything. But I just wanted some story to read to my kids at night. And I just could not find anything. I couldn't find anything that really, suited them or helped them find comfort and peace. And so, I was like, let's just write one.
Sue Ray, it seems that you thought at the least it was a bit odd that she was able to grieve and write the book and get it published within a year.
I think people process things in different ways in their own time. But yes, a lot of times on our show, Good Things Utah, it's a lifestyle show, and we allow people to share their stories and however they process it. And I put myself a lot of times in their shoes, and I think I would never be able to grieve in that amount of time and then write a book and then also take care of my 3 small children who are 10, 9, and 6. Yeah. So I did find it, wow, I can't believe that you've done it. So I needed to ask that question, like, how did you process this whole year and then write a children's book, and then come on a show to talk about it.
There is so much to talk about in this story, but how was it that Kouri Richins and Eric Richins met? How did Eric Richins meet this to-be Black widow? Well, Kouri Richins was a checkout girl at Home Depot, and Eric Richins was a contractor. He had a masonry business with his lifelong friend, and we're going to talk about his friend in a little bit as well. So Eric Richins used to come into Home Depot, and according to Kouri's coworker, they would steal glances at one another, and the coworker could tell that they were both interested in each other, but they were a little bit shy about it and a little bit hesitant to talk. So listen to what this coworker had to say about their meeting.
I could tell he was interested in her because of his employees would come in and go, oh, Eric kind of likes her, but he's afraid, and this and that. And I said, well, tell him to come in and talk to her, So he did, and they ended up going on a date, and that was it.
Those who know Kouri and Eric said that it was like Eric won the lottery when Kouri agreed to go out on dates with him, and eventually the two got married, and they were married for 9 years and had 3 beautiful children together. So how did that beautiful love story turn into such a horrific nightmare? Listen to what Kouri Richins' former coworker Linda King has to say about her reaction to this horrible tragedy that's happened.
I was numb. I can't, and I still can't believe that's true.
It seems that many people that knew Kouri Richins, particularly from the past, were absolutely shocked at what happened. But the people who were not shocked were the people who were close to Eric Richins. One person in particular who was not shocked about what happened was Eric Richins' oldest sister, Katie. Eric Richins' oldest sister, Katie, was 38 years old, and she was a confidant of sorts to Eric, and she had been told the whole story. In fact, Katie and other family members stayed with Kouri Richins and the family in their home in the days after Eric's death. It was only 2 days later when Kouri Richins told Katie that she needed to leave the home so Kouri could have time to mourn on her own. But let's back up just a little bit, just 2 days earlier. It was the day after Eric's death when Kouri held a family meeting, at which time she found out that she had been booted out of Eric's $3.6 million worth will. She was not named as a beneficiary in his life insurance policy or in his will, and this was much to Kouri's shock and dismay. Now, Kouri being booted out of Eric's will was contrary to what she believed the will to be, based on the prenup agreement that she signed that was handed to her by Eric's mother on their wedding day. Seriously, could you imagine it being your wedding day and being handed a prenup by your spouse's mother? But anyway, that's what happened, and Kouri signed the prenup. And some think that Aaron Richins unwittingly signed his own death warrant by establishing a prenup that said that Kouri was not entitled to any of the money or assets that Eric entered into the marriage with, except for and upon his death, at which time Kouri would inherit all of the benefits of his estate, his $3.6 million estate. Now, what was it exactly that caused Eric Richins' mother to hand Kouri Darden Richins a prenup on the date of their wedding? Did she have some suspicions about Kouri, or did it have to do with Eric Richins' previous marriage? Eric Richins was married to a young woman named Julia Jorgensen, and their marriage lasted 4 years. It was in 2011, after their divorce, that Julia Jorgensen met a very unfortunate fate when she was at a stoplight and she was rear-ended by a gentleman driving a truck at 70 miles an hour. Apparently, his windshield was all frosted up and he had been smoking some marijuana and wasn't able to see clearly, and rear-ended Julia Jorgensen, and her injuries were fatal, and in 2011, she passed away. Such a tragic story all the way around. All of these young people losing their lives for these absolutely ridiculous reasons. So we do not know if Eric Richins' mother had suspicions about Kouri Darden Richins prior to their getting married, or if something happened during Eric's marriage to Julia Jorgensen that caused the mother to have some hesitation about him getting married and his wife's or wives-to-be wanting a piece of his estate. Regardless, Kouri Richins was absolutely stunned when she found out that she was not going to be getting a piece of that estate. And this lends to the question, why did Eric Richins cut his wife and the mother of his 3 young boys out of his will? This is not a typical move unless you have some strong suspicions about the person that you are married to that makes you believe they are up to some nefarious doings. And oh boy, did Eric Richins have those strong suspicions about his wife, Kouri. According to the arrest affidavit, when Kouri Richins allegedly poisoned her husband, Eric, to death, it was her 3rd attempt at poisoning her husband, Eric. So let's go back to the night that Eric met his unfortunate fate. According to Kouri, she and Eric were celebrating a success that she had in her real estate business. She had made Eric a Moscow Mule, and then according to her, she went to bed around 9 o'clock. According to Kouri, at some point in the early evening, one of her children woke up having night terrors. So she went into that child's room to comfort the child. And according to Kouri, during the time that she went into the child's room, she left her phone plugged into the charger in her bedroom. Now, this is one of the areas that Kouri really messed up with because, man, Kouri, don't you know that police can find anything on your phone? They know what movements you're making, what text you sent, what calls you made, if you went upstairs, if you went downstairs, if you were running. They can find out literally anything by looking at your phone. But anyway, she claims that she went back to her own bed around 3 a.m. when she woke up in her child's room. And at that point, she touched Eric. He was cool to the touch. And that's when she called 911. So immediately after his death, it was determined that he died of a brain aneurysm, which is a little strange in and of itself. A 39-year-old healthy man dying at age 39 of a brain aneurysm. But hey, I guess that it happens. It wasn't until much later, after apparently police had been conducting all along a complete investigation, did they find some mysterious texts that were sent from her phone and some mysterious texts that were sent the night of his death that had been erased, and we still do not know yet if they had recovered those texts. They uncovered some texts that Kouri had sent to a person just called CL. In the affidavit, the person was named CL apparently in her contacts in her phone. Now, what prompted investigators to start looking more deeply into Kouri Richins was when the toxicology reports came back from the autopsy. It was discovered that Eric Richins actually died from a lethal dose of fentanyl, and the amount of fentanyl in his system was 5 times that of a lethal dose. So that is a whole lot of fentanyl, and apparently the medical examiner could tell that the fentanyl had been ingested orally due to the fentanyl in the gastric fluids and some other medical facts that I'm not going to try to get into here, but the medical examiner is rather certain that the fentanyl was ingested orally. Since Eric had no history of substance use or abuse and no one suspected him of substance use or abuse, this was extremely suspicious. Additionally, apparently the medical examiner was able to tell that the fentanyl that Eric had ingested was not of a medical grade, but rather it was illicit or street fentanyl, which of course made his death even more curious and made the people around him, namely his wife, Kouri, even more suspect. So when those toxicology reports came back, that's when investigators were able to get a search warrant to obtain records from Kouri's residence and also to search her phone. It is at that time when they found her messages to this person, CL. According to the arrest affidavit, when police looked into this person named CL, they found a bunch of counts of possession of controlled substances and counts of possession of controlled substances with intent to distribute and drug paraphernalia and all sorts of things. So it was not until May 2nd of 2023, just this past year, just not too long ago, when Summit County investigators finally interviewed the contact from Kouri's phone called CL. And at that point, CL started spilling the beans on Miss Kouri Richins. CL reported that it was between December 21st and February 22nd that Kouri Richins texted the person called CL and asked CL if the person could get Kouri some prescription pain medication. The guise that Kouri was putting forth was that she had some investor that was having back pain, and apparently, according to Kouri, this investor needed the painkillers for their back pain. Shortly thereafter, CL came up with some hydrocodone pills that CL had obtained from a dealer. And Kouri asked CL to leave the pills at a house that she was flipping in this area of Utah called Midway, where Kouri said that she was leaving CL some money. Now, police were, of course, able to determine that during the time when those text messages were sent and when that exchange occurred, that Kouri did, in fact, own the home where she had asked CL to leave the pills and said that she'd leave the money. So this was starting to look very, very suspicious at this time. So apparently hydrocodone pills are of the weaker sort of the opiate-based pills. So Kouri told CL at some point a couple weeks later that the investor needed something stronger, that the hydrocodone pills were just not strong enough to deal with the investor's back pain, and Kouri asked for, quote, some of the Michael Jackson stuff, which is also curious because we know that Michael Jackson was being given a medication called propofol, which is a medication that is given when somebody goes under anesthesia, which is totally different from an opiate-based painkiller. But anyway, that's what she called it, the Michael Jackson stuff. That's what she wanted. So in short order, CL was able to get those fentanyl pills that Kouri wanted and came up with, according to the arrest affidavit, 15 to 30 fentanyl pills from a certain dealer. And once again, Kouri used her real estate business as a guise to try to hide this exchange. According to the arrest affidavit, Kouri left $900 for CL for those 15 to 30 fentanyl pills. And it was a few days later on Valentine's Day, February 14th, 2022, that Kouri and Eric were supposed to be having a romantic dinner. And shortly after the dinner, Eric got very sick. In fact, Eric got so sick and in such a strange way, he became suspicious. And of course, there had to be other reasons for his suspicion that Kouri had poisoned him. And he passed that information along to a friend of his saying, you know, I got really sick. I'm afraid that Kouri is trying to poison me, which is one of the reasons that we know that Eric was in fact suspicious of his wife. So, of course, this alleged attempt for Kouri to poison to death her husband Eric did not work. So 2 weeks later, on February 26, 2022, according to the arrest affidavit, CL got Kouri another 15 to 30 fentanyl pills, for which Kouri paid $900 and asked CL to leave the pills in an outdoor fire pit in that property in the area called Midway in Utah in exchange for the $900 in cash. So according to the arrest affidavit, it was 6 days later on March 4th, 2022, when Eric was found dead in his home when Kouri called 911 when she found her husband was cold to the touch And after the toxicology reports came back, it was determined that he had died of a lethal fentanyl overdose, being 5 times the lethal limit. Eric died at only 39 years old, just short of his 40th birthday. Such an absolutely tragic event. So what exactly happened that could have turned this seemingly loving wife and mother of 3, an adorable little Home Depot checkout girl, into a black widow who allegedly maliciously poisoned her husband to death? Well, we only know so many facts about that right now, and as I release this video, it is May 18th, 2023, and tomorrow on May 19th, 2023, there's going to be a Utah detention hearing for Kouri Richins, and we may find out more information then. But at this time, what we know is that Kouri's motives seem to be, and allegedly, a matter of pure greed. Now remember, Kouri was positioned to think that she would be getting the benefits of the $3.6 million will that Eric was leaving behind, that he eventually changed into a living trust that he put his sister Katie, 38-year-old Katie, in charge of. What we do know is that Kouri wanted to flip this absolutely magnificent, sprawling home in Utah, and check it out. Here we have a couple photos of it and the concept video that is showing what the inside of this mansion could look like. Check out all of these bedrooms. According to the house's description, there are 8 bedrooms and 11 and a half bathrooms, but these 8 bedrooms are absolutely huge. It looks to me almost like it's a resort, or I don't know, a getaway of sorts. So anyway, Kouri wanted to flip this magnificent, ginormous $2 million home, and Eric thought that it was just too much. Now remember, when Kouri told investigators what was going on the evening of Eric's death, Kouri said that they were celebrating something big that happened in her real estate business, some big win that she had through her work. It was the next day, on March 5th, 2022, when there was scheduled to be a closing on this $2 million home. So was it that Kouri had actually flipped this $2 million home that Eric was saying, oh no, honey, that is too much? It was a big point of contention within their relationship. And people wonder, could this be why Kouri turned from a seemingly loving wife to an evil black widow, taking away her husband, Eric Richins' life at age 39? Now, Eric's will is not the only thing that Kouri was excluded from. In fact, when he was alive, he had, as part of his living will, that when he passed away, he wanted his lifelong friend and business partner, Chad, to purchase half of the business with a life insurance policy that he was leaving Chad, because they had built this business together, and those were Eric's wishes. Sometime in January of 2020, Kouri called up the insurance company, and she tried to make herself the beneficiary of Eric's life insurance policy, so she would be getting that money that he wanted to go to his business partner, Chad, so Chad could buy 50% of their business. But the insurance company was onto her tricks. I'm sure that people do that kind of thing all the time with life insurance companies. So they made sure that the life insurance policy was written just the way that Eric wanted it to be, where the proceeds were going to Chad so he could purchase that portion of the business just as Eric wished. So let's now go back to Kouri's book, the book that Kouri wrote called Are You With Me? That was supposed to be a book for children to be read by their parents or whomever, who are children who are dealing with grief. It's supposed to be a book about handling grief when you're a child that Kouri Richins said was written by herself with input from her children. Remember saying that they just couldn't find any book that would bring the children any peace after their father, Eric, died allegedly at her hands. So she ended up writing this book. Now, if this is true, if Kouri Richins indeed did kill her husband Eric after what appears to be 3 attempts, can you imagine the sheer nerve of this woman, Kouri Darden Richins, to then write a book and then to go on a talk show talking about it, saying that her children wrote the book with her because they couldn't find any other books that brought them a sense of peace? I mean, it is truly absolutely absurd. So as you can see on the cover of this book, there is what appears to be Eric up there in the clouds with a halo adorned above his head, cheering on the children when they are asking, "Daddy, are you with me?" And you see those 5 birds there over on the left-hand side. I believe that probably was to signify the 5 different family members. And my God, I just can't reiterate it enough. If she is in fact guilty of murdering this man, the nerve. You better believe that there will be many more details revealed about this case and what the motive was for Kouri Richins allegedly killing her husband, Eric Richins. So this channel will be absolutely definitely following all of those details as they unfold. And of course, let's remember the victim, Eric Richins, who according to his obituary was painted as an absolutely wonderful, loving, devoted man, son, brother, father, and husband. And on his memorial page, these words were written: "In loving memory of Eric Richins of Hennifer, Utah, it is with profound sorrow that we announce his passing on March 4th, 2022, at the tender age of 39. During this difficult time, we invite family and friends to express their condolences and share cherished memories on this memorial page. Eric was preceded in death by his beloved mother, Linda Richins Carter. He leaves behind a legacy of love, strength in the hearts of those who he touched. He is survived by his father, Gene Richins, who held a special place in Eric's life. Eric's memory will be forever treasured by his adoring sons, Ashton, Weston, who were the constant source of joy and inspiration to him. He held a deep affection for his grandparents, H. Lamont, Alethea Richins Ferguson, and Charles Carter, who provided unwavering support and guidance throughout his life. Eric was united in marriage with his cherished wife, Kouri Richins Darden, and their bond was one of enduring love and commitment. Together they shared countless cherished moments and built a foundation of love and unity. As always on this channel, in addition to remembering the victims and helping to find justice for the victims and peace for the families, we want to know what it is you think. Please leave a comment to this video letting us know what you think about Kouri Richins and her possible motives for the alleged murder of her husband, Eric Richins. Thanks so much for watching, and we hope to see you again.